as well as humanitarian aid. The U.S. has already given Ukraine tens of thousands of missiles and rockets, more than 84 million rounds of ammunition, as well as drones and other gear. The White House said most of the $40 billion already approved by Congress for Ukraine has been dispersed or committed. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
Arizona preparing for an execution Wednesday. Murray Hooper was one of 3 men convicted of killing 2 people in a murder-for-hire scheme in 1980. The other 2 died of natural causes in prison before their death sentences could be carried out. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. It's Reggae in Paradise this Saturday at Paseo Stadium, featuring Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Lickle Jordy,
get this work, I'll be on my way.
High Water,
Like girl, and there will be no other girl for me.
and Rebel Sodas.
My life is on a spaceship.
Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. This Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day, you'll hear a respectful reading of the Second Amendment right here on Tall Tales. You'll hear a lot of chatter about the rest of the Constitution, about freedom, liberty, patriotism, the United States of America and what a great country it is, conservatism, and related subjects. So if that's what you're interested in, man, you are in the right place. If it's not what you're interested in, man, you are in the right place because you need some learning. And that's what we're going to provide. We're going to start out here with Zemi Ikutni. First of all, I got to make a technical communication here. Jose, I can't get on Facebook. Can you?
I am on my phone. I'll check it in the first break.
All right. So I hate to start a show like this because, you know, your comments on Facebook are a really important part of the show. It makes my extremely difficult job just a tad bit easier. So I'm always first thing I do is sit down here and try to get Facebook to come up. Facebook, I think the techies behind Facebook take a certain amount of pleasure in making it very difficult to deal with under the best of circumstances. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to Zemi Ikutni. And I'm going to give a little bit of rhetorical advice that you've probably heard on Tall Tales before. And that is the difference between the words and but. Now, the grammarian would tell you that they're both coordinating conjunctions. They're used to connect two main clauses in a sentence. But they have a totally different connotation and mean something totally opposite from but. So I'm going to get into this editorial and then I'll stop and tell you exactly what I mean. So the editorial today is this. The title is this: Our View, Build Up Good for Economy, but Concerns Remain. Guam is in the midst of a large-scale military buildup, and for the attendees at the Society of American Military Engineers Guam Industry Forum 2022, that's exciting news. Speakers said Guam, the Northern Marianas, Palau, and the Federated States are going to benefit from up to $2 billion annual expenditures over the next 7 years. And once the military facilities are built, they will be needed operated for decades to come. For those in the business of building and contracting with the military, opportunities abound. There are currently 4,000 construction workers on the island under the federal H-2B program, according to the governor, and contractors are overcoming pandemic-related supply chain issues to get materials to Guam and the other islands. The buildup was planned years ago with the movement of Marines from Okinawa to Guam. But in recent years, regional tensions have evolved with China and North Korea becoming more aggressive. Now Guam is home to 5 fast attack submarines, and a missile defensive system is being planned for the region. During the forum, Governor Leon Guerrero said the island's economic outlook is good. The future is bright for us. I know that the military is going to be pumping in about $1.5 million a year for the next 10 years, she said. Now, here we go. While the buildup is good news for those investing in defense, we need to remember that not everyone is excited about a larger military presence on the island. There are land issues, access issues, and environmental issues that need to be worked out. And it's important for local voices to be heard when decisions are made. While we've seen the road improvements that have already resulted from the military buildup, we have also seen ancient artifacts and burial areas discovered and removed. While we know that infusion of money and assistance can greatly benefit the island, we also know that national defense interests are not always in line with the interests of the local population. The buildup is here. As a community, we need to make sure we have a seat at the table and that our voices are heard going forward. Yeah. So, in other words, we got to make sure we got something to bitch about here.
How inconsistent. And, you know, it makes me really look at this. And we talked about yesterday, Bob, after the show, the mindset of our island where we just ignore what's going on and just focus on one thing and put the blame on one thing without cleaning our own houses. Every violation they blame the military for here on Guam, our own islanders violate tenfold all the time. And it infuriates me. When I was helping to clean up Paget during that whole protest, I'm like, who put all this trash here? It wasn't the military.
No.
And I know that they're saying that, well, after World War II, you know, where did the military dump all their stuff? Well, it was a war zone. There had to have been a cleanup. It wasn't like they came here and just dumped goods. But we're violating our own island, and they don't even put a focus on that. They put a focus on something that's good, so they have to tear it down.
Exactly.
It's exasperating.
It really is. So taking me back to the words and but. So this title could have read, Build Up Good for Economy, and we can address concerns that arise. But if you use but as your coordinating conjunction, no one pays any attention to the first clause. It's all the only thing that people are concerned about is what comes after the word but. So when you see somebody, when you hear, yeah, I'm for the buildup, but that's kind of the code for, but I'm not really. I'm not really for the buildup. I'd much rather engage in grievance politics and the willful blindness that Jose explains. Every day I have to drive back and forth on Marine Corps Drive between Dededo and Jigo, or Jigo and Dededo, Dededo and Jigo. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It looks like the back road to a dump in some third world country, not the main highway of our island. And it's even worse now that the military has mowed the space between the fence that they're building around Andy South and the area where the government of Guam is supposed to maintain the roads. There's a stop sign with about a 4-inch mantle of vines growing on a stop sign, a traffic sign with about a 4-inch mantle of vines growing on top of the sign. It's a Tongan forest, and you can't blame the military. You just got to blame us. We got a village mayor, I heard. I've never seen him do anything to the roads. We have a Department of Public Works, Vince Areola, that has created Lake Areola at the intersection of Marine Corps Drive and Chalon Laguna. It was bad until they came along and fixed it and dumped some cold mix in there, raising the level of the area that doesn't drain, therefore deepening and widening the potholes.
It looks like sand dunes when the water dries up.
It does. It really does. So, Daily News, I suspect you think you're putting balance in your editorials, but you're not. You're not putting balance in your editorials. You're imitating, the separatists and their grievance politics. Well, this is 99% grievance. I mean, good news, but we got to find something to bitch about to put some balance into this editorial. That's kind of what their message is here. Okay, let's take a look at the card. Of course, I've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I've got Public Law 3634 and people who can't comply with it. I've got the governor versus the people. I've got Munga Barnes versus babies, Navy versus Guam, Hobbs versus abortion, greed versus prices, and a holdover from yesterday, booze versus the electorate. Okay, not much time necessary on Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. You know that the color of the rice that you see at every fiesta is orange. You know that culturally it's required that you refer to it as red rice. You know that the narrative is red, the facts are orange. Paul Zerzan got canceled when he came along and told the truth and said, hey, stop calling it red rice, it's orange. So when you hear me hear Jose and I talk about systemic racism, what we're talking about is another situation where we have the narrative that's not true, that's given more weight than the actual facts and the truth. Okay, let's move on to the public law section of the agenda. I start out here with the hospital. I wonder if the hospital is just dead set on violating the law no matter what. Because the agenda for the November 23rd meeting, which is today at 5 p.m. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. So they're a little late on their notice, aren't they? Oh, I'm sorry. They're actually a week early. November 23rd. Today's the 16th. So it's a large paragraph of items. Things like Guam Memorial Hospital Volunteers Association report, subcommittee reports, joint conference and professional support, etc., on and on and on. But where do those things appear in the agenda? After item 4, new business. So it says new business, item 4, and then item 5, and there's a list, just this long, long list of things that are actually apparently new business. And then, of course, there's old business with no items behind it. So somebody just really needs to be taken out behind the hospital and given what for. Because you put the items that are new business after that item on the agenda, and the same with old business. You just don't put old business, new business, and then go on to something else.
Well, they can get away with the big stuff, What is this?
Yeah, this is just nickels and dimes, isn't it? Yeah, and then we have a surprise. The Election Commission, Maria Fernandez, is usually really good at just about everything she does. Yeah, but she's got item 8 in her agenda for the next meeting. Item 8, new business, without telling us what the new business is. And that, of course, voids every action that is taken in this next meeting. Then we have the Cancer Trust Fund, which is, the poster child for really how not to do it. Number 1, call to order. 2, approval of minutes. 3, report from the chair. 4, report from GCTF program manager. 5, old business. 6, new business. 7, open discussion. 8, adjournment. So they apparently borrowed the agenda from the bowling club, last meeting of the bowling club, and figured that's good enough. Now, if you want to go to the meeting, you should contact Rami Lynn Yamanaka. Rami Lynn, you need to study the agenda a little bit. You're not doing it right. Okay, next item on the card is the governor versus the people of Guam. Executive Order 2022-25. Relative to declaring the day after Thanksgiving a holiday. Now, there's a section in the Guam Code that says the governor may declare a holiday, for a good reason, bad reason, no reason at all. And this just happens all the time. I would like to see a Republican senator repeal that law, introduce a bill to repeal it. It is such a waste. 7 or 8 years ago, the Daily News ran a story where they inquired of the director of administration as to how much that day off costs us. It's over $900,000. Because anybody, if everybody gets paid to stay home, then everybody knows that people that go to work got to get paid double pay because they had to work when everybody else got the day off. And this would include people who certainly know that they're going to be working on holidays, like folks at the hospital, police, fire, etc. It's just a gigantic giveaway money scheme. And it's a little bit surprising because, Governor, the election's over. You won. You don't need to do this anymore. But this is so wasteful. So here's what she said. Title I, Guam Code Annotated, Section 1000C, provides that, quote, in addition to the holidays specified in this section, the governor may declare by executive order additional non-permanent holidays for special purposes. Yeah. And the special purpose here is what? Rewarders, supporters. And the resolution goes on, whereas in celebration of our first Thanksgiving out from under the cloud of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wrong.
Are we still in an emergency?
Yeah, we're not out from under the cloud of our emergencies. And to provide our government agencies ample time to make necessary administrative adjustments, including the provision of adequate statutory notice for hearings. Today, I announce that the day after Thanksgiving shall be a holiday. Whereas, may we take this time to be with our loved ones and in our words and actions express gratitude in our hearts for those who have helped us through the difficult times behind us and who continue to lift us into a brighter future together. Now, this only applies, of course, to about the 11,000 people that work for the government of Guam. The rest of us don't have families. And the rest of us do anything to get us through the difficult times.
You didn't receive the version 2.0 of the announcement?
No.
It ended with, "It's the least I could do."
Yeah, right. Yeah, and this is a classic case, Governor. It's not yours to give. You're giving away my money, is what you're doing. You're wasting money that I paid in taxes for this government to function, not for the government to shut down. So then she goes on to say, "Now, therefore, I, Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, a Magahagan Guahan, Governor of Guam, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Organic Act of Guam as amended, do hereby order, 1, declaration of the day after Thanksgiving as a holiday, pursuant to 1 GCA 1000 subsection C, Friday, November 25 is declared a Government of Guam holiday. 2, severability." I wonder what bunch of kids she has up in her office drafting these things. "If any provision of this executive order or its application to any person is held invalid, the invalidity shall not affect other provisions." Well, there's only one provision. What a waste of ink. And then 3, prior orders remain in effect. All prior executive orders remain in full force and effect except where previously amended or rescinded or to the extent they conflict with this order. What a pile of crap. And I go back again to what I always harp upon. What I'm looking for is this: an efficient, effective government operating within the rule of law, providing basic government services on at least a break-even basis. This is not break-even basis. This is costing us $900,000 for nothing. All right, let's hope we got somebody else to help me kvetch about this here. Yeah, I've got AKA Sam, who hung up.
He was just referencing a movie back in the day, a Mel Brooks movie, Blazing Saddles. Something that would never be able to be made today.
No.
Where the governor was reading a letter from himself saying he declared himself governor or something like that. I got to watch the movie again, but great Mel Brooks film.
Yeah. Good sound effects, Jose.
You're welcome. This one?
No. Mel.
Yeah.
Blazing Saddle had some really great sound effects. Sounded so realistic.
Yeah.
All right, next I've got Munga Barnes versus Babies, and this picks up again on the heartbeat bill and won't Parkinson and that whole kerfuffle. And it starts out, bill to restrict abortion was stalled until days after election. And then there's a screen capture, and it says a screen capture of a letter to Speaker Therese Tatlahi posted on Instagram Saturday by Senator-elect Won't Parkinson's Instagram campaign page. Parkinson expressed his opposition to the 36th legislature voting on abortion restrictions when 6 of the lawmakers are leaving office. So, So the article goes on to say, legislation to further restrict abortion access to abortion on Guam sat idle until days after this year's general election. Over 1,000 people testified for and against the Guam Heartbeat Act, which would ban abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected in the womb. The measure was unable to be debated. Now, what kind of language is that? the measure was unable to be debated. I think what they're saying is debate on the measure couldn't be held. The measure was unable to be debated by lawmakers and go to vote on the session floor without final approval from the legislature's Committee on Health until November 10. If you're not confused by now, you should be. The day after the final unofficial results for general election were tabulated. In other words, the final vote to report that bill out wasn't placed on the committee report until the 10th of November, the day after we found out who won the election. That's what they're trying to say. On 10 November, Amanda Shelton, who ranked third in the legislative race, cast the final vote needed for the Heartbeat Act to be eligible for placement on the session agenda, according to legislative records posted on Speaker Tetlahi's website. Tetlahi is the Health Committee chair who didn't vote at all on the Heartbeat Act. She didn't vote do pass. She didn't vote do not pass. She did not vote refer to the inactive file. She didn't vote report out only. She just left that space blank, even though there were 3 votes in June. So she could have moved it way back in June. and she wouldn't have had to endorse it. She could have just voted report out only. That way it would have gone to the Rules Committee. According to Shelton's office on Tuesday, the Democrat senator was off island. Shelton was co-sponsor of the Heartbeat Act, but has declined to respond to the newspaper's questioning about her position on abortion. And once again, we go back to won't Parkinson really leveled on this, right? He said, people have a right to know where you are on this. So you sponsor the Heartbeat Act, and then you invoke a self-imposed gag rule after sponsoring the Heartbeat Act. Won't Parkinson, an incoming senator, raised an objection over the timing of the bill's advancement and is lobbying for sitting Senate. He's lobbying? Why does he have to lobby?
Maybe he doesn't understand what he was elected for.
But he's a senator-elect. He doesn't have to lobby. He just has to tell him what he wants. Otherwise, why run for office, right?
He's still looking for his instruction book in the weeds.
Yeah. He posted a letter with his objection to Terlahi on social media this past weekend, asking the decision be left to the next legislature. He took issue with the fact that more than a third of the sitting senators are lame ducks, meaning they won't be returning to office next year. According to Parkinson, that means they're beyond the scrutiny of the electorate. And then the names are listed there: Mary Torres, Clint Rigel, Jim Moylan, Talina Nelson, Tony Atta, and Pito Terlahi. They're the lame ducks. And of course, if you're a tailgater, you know that they're lame ducks, but you know that Won't Parkinson is a flightless rooster. He can do a lot of squawking and crowing, but until he's sworn in, he can't get off the ground. Okay, a quote, by allowing this emotionally charged issue to proceed during the holidays after the general election in lame duck sessions, we cast a long and dirty shadow over the lawmaking process, creating a scenario in which both sides lose, wrote Parkinson, who has voiced his support for preserving abortion access now that the legislature has the authority to regulate the procedure. Tetlahi responded in a statement, noting the bill has been waiting for a vote on whether to. The bill has been waiting for a vote on whether to stay or move forward from the Health Committee since June. The bill has been waiting.
You know, back in the day, Bob, there was this little blurbs during Saturday morning cartoons called Schoolhouse Rock. Maybe she's referring to that guy. It was a little character, looked like a parchment paper rolled up. His name was Bill, and he was just sitting on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Terlahi, no, I just don't think that this is what Terlahi said. I think she's a little more literate than that. Terlahi responded in a statement noting the bill has been waiting for a vote on whether to stay or move forward from the Health Committee members since June. The poor bill. The bill is sitting there wringing it. No, it doesn't have hands to wring. The bill is just sitting there gnashing his teeth. No, the bill does. The bill. Can a bill wait for something?
I heard it's growing a beard.
It'll never match yours, Jose. Yeah, boy, who wrote this story? I should have made a note who wrote this story. This is the Daily News. You need to go back to...
I think it's Joe Titano II.
You need to go back to English 101, Joe. Terlahi said she has handled the issue with respect for the more than 1,000 residents who testified over 4 public hearings. Respect. However, the power to weigh any bill remains with the sitting legislature, she said. Well, not when you're a member of the committee, Therese. And by not voting to report out only, you are making the poor bill sit there and wait. I'll bet that bill doesn't have any fingernails left, Jose. Sat there chewing its fingernails, waiting. Quote, Senator-elect Parkinson seemed concerned that the Organic Act allowed another senator to vote on a committee report after the election and allows duly elected senators to consider bills until after the subsequent inauguration. If he wants to reduce the Organic Act authority of the legislature, he will need to discuss that with the U.S. Congress. Terlahi said. Very dramatic. Not as dramatic, however, as Terlahi herself not voting on the committee report and holding it up since June. All right, let's take a break, and Jose, you can take a look at my device here.
Looking for a boost in leadership? Live to Lead is back. Guam's #1 leadership event is coming November 29th at the Hyatt Regency Guam. It's the 8th annual global simulcast with 5 world-class speakers led by John C. Maxwell. We'll have leadership activities at the table, and you'll get a plan to jumpstart 2023. It's an exciting and energizing day to reset and recharge. Get all the details at livetoleadguam.com. That's leadguam.com. Live2leadguam.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, the Guam Chamber of Commerce, Guam Contractors Association, the Guam Daily Post, and 93.3 FM The Point. Get the details and the lowest possible ticket prices right now at livetoleadguam.com. I'm Jerry Roberts, and I approve this message.
Farewell, ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so back to this article. So when Shelton finally signed 2 days after the election, signed the committee report to report out only, the bill could then be sent to the Rules Committee. This is a classic case of what Won't Parkinson was complaining about. The bill had 3 signatures way back in June, and it needed only one more report out, and it could have been easily dealt with before the election. But the Speaker, who's also the chairman of that committee, did not sign. Shelton, one of the co-sponsors of the Heartbeat bill, did not sign until after the election. So you got a clear picture here of senators who know that this is something the public is very interested in, and if the public sees them on the wrong side, it could cost them votes. So they sit on it until after the election. Terlahi and Shelton sat on it until after the election. And okay, so now the bill is sent to the Rules Committee, and we'll see who sits on it next. The decision on whether to address the Heartbeat Act in the 2 remaining monthly sessions of the legislature isn't up to her, the Speaker added. A little passing of the buck here. Either the Committee on Rules or senators on the floor will make that call. A Rules Committee meeting was scheduled Tuesday to iron out the agenda for the never session, but was rescheduled until next Tuesday because Mary Torres, who could have made the necessary number of senators present for a quorum, didn't show up. The others that didn't show had some plausible reason. Mary Torres just didn't show. So once again, by skillful maneuvering of the mechanics of the legislature, you can determine what's not going to become law. Now, Won't Parkinson, if you're really sincere about what you're saying, and if you're not just addressing your negativity to a single aspect, you want to be the champion of putting an end to this stuff. And while I'm talking about it, you want to be the champion of amending the standing rules to avoid quarterbacks during roll call on votes. But I suspect you won't. That's why you're Won't Parkinson. Vice Speaker Tina Munga Barnes, Rules Committee Chair, told the paper she won't support the bill being moved during the upcoming 2 sessions. She's the chairman of the committee. She just doesn't need to put it on the rules agenda. Now, a member of the Rules Committee could move to put it on the rules agenda, but once again, you need a majority of the votes. So let's say that I think there are 9 or 10 folks, members of the agenda. So Barnes says, calls the meeting to order. Chris Dueñas stands up and says, Madam Chair, I don't see reference to the Heartbeat bill on the agenda for today's meeting. I move that it be placed on the agenda. All right. He and a couple of the other Republicans vote yes. Everybody else makes a head call. It's amazing how attacks of Kenilak can arise when it's time to vote and everybody has to beat a door to the common so they don't have to vote. Okay, here's what Munga Barnes said. Clearly, some issues are so divisive, so emotionally charged, that taking them up only after an election had passed will seem politically convenient, tainting the issue being considered. After, if Barnes pays as much attention as I pay to this right now, she knows why it's being discussed after the election. Because the speaker sat on it since June. You folks, I don't want to take the former director of Gita Gura's name in vain here, I just won't even mention his name. But BJ, you need to come over to the legislature and tag these folks who can lie with straight faces. Or not lie, but, put on facial expressions that, in a sense, convey what really happened. Speaker Terlahi, it's up to the full body. It's up to the committee. Speaker Terlahi, couldn't you have voted on that committee report? Oh, yeah, but, you have to have 4 votes to report a bill out of committee, either 4 do pass or 4 report out only, or any combination thereof. How did you vote? Excuse me, I have to go to the ladies' room.
Well, see, that means that with abortion bills or anti-abortion bills, what's at stake isn't the lives of babies. It's the perpetual ambiguity of these senators.
Exactly. And they're more than willing to allow the lives of babies to swing in that balance of the perpetuation.
So they can remain on the fence.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tina, the reason that it's only coming up after the election is because your members of your party, including a co-sponsor of the bill, didn't want it to come up until after the election. Very bad performance. So, Won't Parkinson, let's see if you can walk the walk.
Well, it's interesting that Won't Parkinson yesterday had mentioned that it's time that these members pointed out their viewpoints.
Exactly.
So put the bill to a vote.
Exactly.
That's how he should be arguing.
Yeah. And going back again to the committee report, senators don't make their viewpoints known by getting into long battles of press releases. They make their viewpoints known by their votes and the bills that they introduce. Voting on bills and voting on committee reports. So when Shelton didn't vote on her committee report on her own bill, that just tells you that she's kadu pro-life. She wants to wear the mantle of pro-life, but she doesn't want to be called out on it.
She doesn't want to get on another blacklist.
Exactly. All right. Let's see. I've got the names of the members of the Rules Committee here. We've got Munga Barnes, Shelton, Therese, Talina, Josette Augustine, Clint Rangel, Pito Terlahi, Sabina Paris, Mary Camacho Torres. Yeah, so that's where it'll go. And of course, Tina doesn't even have to put it on the agenda for rules.
Add Cowardly Lion to the menagerie.
Exactly. Now, when the legislation is called to order, a senator can stand up and say, Madam Speaker, I move that the heartbeat bill be placed on the top of today's agenda. And if he gets a second, there can be some discussion on that motion, etc. And the motion will go up or down. Yeah. But that's the hard way to get a bill on the session. The regular way is through the rules. Okay, next we've got the Navy versus the government of Guam. And this is a story, this was front page. Yeah, okay, this is front page on the Post. We'll come back to this right after the break.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. It's Reggae in Paradise this Saturday at Paseo Stadium, featuring Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy,
Get this work, I'll be on my way.
High Water,
Like Pearl, and there will be no other girl for me.
and Rebel Sojas.
My life is on a spaceship.
Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. This Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Yeah, okay, so here we are with the Navy versus the government of Guam. We're going to need law and order notebooks for this one, Jose. Okay, this is front page story on the Post. It's quite the leap of faith. Doctor concerned with on-base abortions.
That was what the doctor's statement.
Yeah, so the doctor, leap of faith. Well, when I hear a doctor talking about faith and abortions, well, you know what pops into my head? She's saying abortion is really contrary to my faith. And I don't know what goes on base, but I don't want any part of it. That's what I thought. Silly
That's
me.
what you would think from this. Yeah,
Silly
right.
me. Cases regarding Guam's local law that limit abortions are still undecided, but the on-island situation has gained national attention as questions were raised before the U.S. Congress over what an abortion ban would mean for military doctors stationed on Guam in light of the Supreme Court's repeal of Roe versus Wade. It wasn't a repeal, it was overruled. You don't repeal Supreme Court decisions.
They're not lawmakers, people.
Where do they find these reporters? In July, active military service members and doctors shared their concerns over accessing abortion and questioned what the abortion bans will mean for them. One of the individuals who submitted testimony before Congress was Dr. Megan Klosik, an obstetrician and gynecologist at Naval Hospital, Guam. She expressed concern over whether risk of arrest would be present locally if she legally performed an abortion at the military medical facility. Klosik also signed on recently as a part-time OBGYN with the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Am I to put two and two together here, Jose?
They finally procured their abortions.
Yeah. Is that what this is about?
That's what this is about.
Okay, well, we've got to make a note then of Dr. Megan Klosik. She deserves a lot of attention here on Tall Tales. What assurances, quote, what assurances can you give me that my family will not be torn apart?
Is she speaking for the mother? The
Is
child?
she talking about being pregnant?
Right.
And going to the Naval Hospital and being forced to have an abortion?
Wow.
What assurances can you give me that my family will not be torn apart? How is the question of jurisdiction to be reconciled when NCIS says I haven't committed a crime, but Guam says I have, she wrote in testimony submitted to the committee. What's this about tearing her family apart? Quote, it's quite a leap of faith to hope that it will all just work out. Who will care for my patients if my partners, she has partners at the Naval Hospital, and I are in jail? An article from Defense One quoted Klosik saying, but according to the Secretary of Defense, the doctor's concern is non-issue. Anything coming from the Secretary of Defense, you know, I'm sorry. I just don't put much faith in whatever he says. He's about as woke as they come. And here we go. On October 20, 2022, the Secretary of Defense released a memorandum on the subject, ensuring access to reproductive health care. Per that memorandum, the Secretary of Defense states there is no higher priority than taking care of our people and ensuring their health and well-being.
But what does that have to do about tearing babies apart limb to limb?
The Department of Defense will continue to closely evaluate our policies to ensure that we continue to provide classic bureaucratese, using a lot of words and saying absolutely nothing. Seamless access to reproductive health care is appropriate and consistent with federal law. United States Naval Hospital, Guam, and Joint Region Marianas told the Daily Post. So apparently the hospital, if you walk past the hospital, you could hear the hospital talking because the hospital told them this. Not a person at the hospital, but the hospital itself. As it stands, there's no conflict between Guam law and federal abortion laws. But the island's military command and hospital have said there should be no need for DOD doctors to fear legal action locally. Federal funds and federal facilities may be used to conduct abortions in cases where the life of the mother would be endangered if the fetus were carried to term, or in a case in which the pregnancy is the result of rape or incest under 10 U.S.C. 1093. Okay. If you're going along with the exceptions, that answers the question. Healthy mother, healthy young mother represented by Anita Williams, who comes up to the hospital and says to the commanding officer of the hospital, I'm Vanessa Williams, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer here for Petty Officer Smuckatelli. And Smuckatelli wants to have an abortion. She's healthy, the baby's healthy, no health risks, no rape involved. She wants to have an abortion, and this is the reason why she wants to have an abortion. It's impossible for her to separate her choices of whether and when to have children from every other choice in her life. She knows that. So she wants to have an abortion. You guys can do it up there, right? The Klosik can do that abortion, right? Well, let me see what the book says here, the CO says. And he says, we can, under 10 U.S.C. 1093, we can do an abortion with the fetus if carried to term in case endangers, as you were, in case the life of the mother is endangered if the fetus were carried to term, or if the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest. Now, you said no rape, no interest in your mother, your client's not in danger. Well, then I guess she can't have an abortion here. How do we get things so wrong here?
This is another above-the-fold front page non-story.
Yeah.
Number one, there are no abortion banning laws on Guam as of right now.
Well, maybe, but let's assume, Arguendo, that there aren't. but let's assume that there are. And this is the out. Abortion's illegal. The Navy's not going to do an abortion except for the 3 exceptions. But that's not what the rest of the story says. Right? Yeah, okay, we'll come back to this after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The 2024 presidential race is on. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, with an announcement Monday night from former President Trump.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Mr. Trump promised to stop illegal immigration, attack the crime rate, and seek term limits for members of Congress. He called the U.S. a nation in decline under President Biden. The president convened an emergency meeting of the G20 leaders at the Bali summit to discuss the Russian-made missile that fell into Poland, killing 2 people near its border with Ukraine. U.S. intelligence now reportedly believes that rocket was actually fired by Ukrainian forces trying to shoot down an incoming Russian missile. President now en route back to Washington from Indonesia with a fueling stop scheduled in Guam. NASA moments ago firing the engines on the Orion rocket at Cape Canaveral, Florida, launching the country's first moon mission in nearly 50 years.
3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
Audio courtesy of NASA TV. Fox's Phil Keating is at Cape Canaveral.
This flight is uncrewed, but the mission is historic. Blast off, circle the Earth, and then head back to the moon. This mission is all about data, testing the rocket, the Orion capsule, orbiting the moon, then returning to Earth, and all importantly, proving Orion's heat shield works perfectly. The capsule is going to be screaming through Earth's atmosphere at about 25,000 miles an hour. The whole mission will last 42 days, so a lot of time in space for what NASA plans to be a whole lot of assessing this decade in the making, $100 billion mission.
Wall Street rising Tuesday, the Dow gaining 56 points, NASDAQ up 162, the S&P 500 closing 34 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. It's Reggae in Paradise this Saturday at Paseo Stadium, featuring Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Lickle Jordy,
Get this work, I'll be on my way.
High Water,
Like Pearl, and there will be no other girl for me.
and Rebel Sojas.
My life is on a spaceship.
Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. This Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
More tough questions for the Homeland Security Secretary in a congressional hearing Tuesday.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas facing questions about his future at a hearing today on Capitol Hill. His first public appearance since forcing his Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, Chris Magnus, to resign. Republicans accuse Mayorkas of making Magnus the fall guy for President Biden's broken border policies. The hearing comes comes amid staggering new CBP numbers showing more than 230,000 migrants crossed the border last month. CBP sources add October average about 2,000 gotaways every single day. People who slipped into the country without a trace.
Fox's Aisha Hosni, just days after the cryptocurrency's third largest exchange collapsed. The public's now starting to get an idea of just how messy the FTX bankruptcy case could be. Other crypto firms are now failing as a result of FTX's unraveling. Events reminiscing of the domino-like meltdowns of the 2008 financial crisis. In a court filing, lawyers for FTX said there were already more than 100,000 claims against the company, most from customers, and estimate that figure could grow to more than 1 million once the case is complete. Police in New York State releasing more details about a deadly domestic shooting involving a police officer.
Police in Rochester call it a double murder-suicide. They say off-duty officer Tiffany Gadsden shot 2 women and then turned the gun on herself. She was pronounced dead after being taken to a hospital. One of her victims also died, while a third woman is being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. So far, there's no word on a motive. The New York State Attorney General's office is conducting an investigation as required by law when a crime is committed by a police officer. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are back again with the Naval Hospital and abortion, and tearing families apart. I don't know much about this Klosek, Dr. Klosek, but I think I already don't like her. You know, a flair for the dramatic, talking about, something tearing her family apart. Yeah. And apparently willing to do abortions and going to work, moonlighting on the outside. It's none of this looks good at all.
So are we looking forward to abortions at DPHSS?
That's the question, isn't it? Yeah.
I'd like to know who's paying for them.
Yeah. Okay, going on with the story. The island's military command and hospital has said there should be no need for DOD doctors to fear legal action locally. Quote, federal funds and federal facilities may be used to conduct abortions in cases where the life of the mother would be endangered if the fetus were carried to term or in case in which the pregnancy is a result of rape or incest under 10 U.S.C. 1093. So, you know, as a practical matter, there's no issue here. Unless we're talking about, you know, sailors coming in and saying, I want an abortion. I wasn't raped. No fetal anomalies. I'm healthy, etc. That's the real question here. So it's a really poorly written story. Okay, then the story goes on to say Guam enjoys legal jurisdiction with the federal government over U.S. Naval Hospital under 48 U.S.C. 1704. Well, what the reporter's trying to say here is that the government of Guam has concurrent jurisdiction with the national government over property owned by what people refer to as the federal government, but you know me, Jose. That's under 48 U.S.C. 1704. That's according to both the Naval Hospital and the Joint Region Marianas told the Post that. These anthropomorphic buildings.
Oh, they're growing.
Yeah. So, you know, if Bell's Law came back into if Doug Moylan wins and Doug Moylan moves to have the injunction enjoining the enforcement of Bell's Law lifted, and Bell's Law then becomes the law, then this becomes an issue because Bell's Law does not engage the three exceptions. So what happens then if a Navy person wants an abortion? There are no exceptions. It's against Guam law under 48 U.S.C. 1704. The government of Guam has concurrent jurisdiction with Navy, which means, you know, if there's a murder, the government of Guam can prosecute the murder, even if the murder happens inside Naval Station.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, 99 times out of 100, it's not going to, but it could. That's what concurrent jurisdiction means. Okay. So then the article goes on to say, while justified, the doctor's concerns centered around the possibility of a future change in abortion laws locally. USNH and Guam and GRM said, but even then it would remain a non-issue for military doctors. Now, I have a feeling that, you know, some PR person gave them the next paragraph, not a lawyer. Because here's what the next paragraph says. You don't have to worry because in the event that case exists where state or territorial law conflicts with federal law, according to Article 6, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, the federal law reigns supreme. Okay.
Nope.
Well, let me just read that section to you. Article 6, Section 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. Key phrase. And all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So it has to be a law made in pursuance of the Constitution. Okay, then you go back to Articles 1, Section 8 to see the powers that the Constitution gives to the Congress. And we start out, you know, lay and collect taxes, debts, money, commerce, naturalization, counterfeiting, post roads and post roads, science, constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas, declare war, raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money for that use shall be longer than 2 years. Provide and maintain a navy to make rules and government regulations of the land and naval forces. Now, is that enough to say that federal employees or federal service people can conduct abortions, can take the life of a helpless, innocent human in violation of local law? And I think there's a really good argument that the answer to that question is no. But it's so convenient to say, well, you know, federal law controls. It's a supremacy clause. It just doesn't necessarily follow. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that it says the official stated. I suspect it wasn't a lawyer, because I don't think a lawyer is going to make that statement. A lawyer could possibly say, there is a possibility that under the supremacy clause, there is a possibility that a properly drawn statute allowing abortions by military personnel would trump local statutes. But it's not an ironclad case. Now, again, I know that this isn't everybody knows. Guam law doesn't apply on the base, right? Well, it does. Yeah. So if you really want to know what's going on Guam, don't spend a whole lot of time with the newspapers, because you're not going to get very accurate information. Okay, we're going to go from there to New Mexico. And this is I've got it on the calendar as Hobbs versus abortion. Now, when I mention Hobbs, you're probably thinking, God, we're going to go back to Won't Parkinson again?
That isn't it that Roe versus Wade case?
Won't versus Parkinson said that Hobbs, a Supreme Court case called Hobbs, overruled Roe versus Wade, causing me to say, I guess there were two, Hobbs and Dobbs.
Must have been.
Yeah. Well, this is not that Hobbs, so we're going to leave Won't alone for a while, right? And this is an article that ran on LifeSite. New Mexico City passes pro-life ordinance to make it harder for abortion facilities to open. So here it goes. I think New Mexico as a whole, except a few leaders, want to save lives, said New Mexico Republican Senator David Gallegos. And the byline of this story is Hobbs, New Mexico. Hobbs is down in the southeast corner of the state. Hobbs, Clovis, Roswell, that part of the state. If you've ever spent any time in New Mexico, people will call the area down there, that area, Hobbs, Clovis, Roswell. They call it Little Texas. A city commission in New Mexico, a Democrat-led state with pro-abortion legislation, recently passed a pro-life ordinance which makes it harder for abortion clinics to operate within the city's boundaries. The Hobbs City Commission unanimously voted on Monday in favor of a citywide law that would ban the mailing of abortion pills and require specific licenses and notices of procedures for abortion clinics to operate, all of which are grounded in the federal Racketeer and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO Act, and federal prohibitions on the mailing of abortion-inducing drugs, which were previously blocked by Roe versus Wade. You know, who was it yesterday that was it Daily News critical of senators introducing bills that were copied from other jurisdictions? Yeah, maybe we ought to copy this one from New Mexico, huh? While the Biden administration is unlikely to enforce 18 U.S.C. 1461-2, that's mailing of abortion-inducing drugs, which is against federal law, Jose. As found within meeting notes from November 7, the ordinance was introduced with the purpose of amending Title V of the Hobbs Municipal Code, requiring abortion providers in Hobbs to comply with federal law. Well, that's a novel approach. Federal law imposes criminal liability on every person who ships or receives abortion pills or abortion-related paraphernalia in interstate or foreign commerce. The ordinance states, the state constitution of New Mexico does not and cannot secure a right, privilege, or immunity to act in violation of federal statutes. It's kind of the reverse of Naval Hospital and Joint Regent Mariana's, what they said, right? The ordinance first requires abortion providers to obtain proper licensure to be able to open an abortion clinic, which includes a brief narrative describing the activities planned at the location, including the types of abortion to be performed, and a compliance statement promising to operate under federal abortion laws, including 18 U.S.C. Section 1461 and 2. Affiliates of licensed abortion clinics are prohibited from using the mails to send any article or thing designed, adapted, or intended for producing an abortion, or any article, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing which is advertised or described in a manner calculated to lead another to use it or apply it for producing an abortion. Additionally, it's illegal for anyone to participate in any form of foreign commerce of any product designed to kill an unborn child through abortion, knowingly taking or receiving from any company or system which mails abortion drugs or instruments through the illegal transport between countries is also prohibited. Well, I think we had this on Tall Tales the other day. There's a company in the Netherlands that is more than willing to email the two chemical abortion pills to people in the United States if you can't get it anywhere else. Mayor Sam Cobb told LifeSite News that the city does not have the authority to prevent abortion clinics from operating, but received overwhelming support from the community to pass an ordinance defining the guidelines for legal abortion within the city. All rules are on emphasis on the federal statutes in place, including the illegal mailing of abortion pills. The City of Hobbs City Commission calls upon the United States attorneys for the District of New Mexico, both present and future, to investigate and prosecute abortion providers and abortion pill distribution networks, the ordinance states. The commission added that it also encourages victims of abortion providers and abortion pill distribution networks, including mothers, fathers, and surviving relatives of aborted unborn children, to sue these racketeering enterprises under civil RICO. These guys aren't horsing around, are they? Although meeting documents included an order for a notice of the ordinance to be published in the city's local newspaper, the articles do not appear on the paper's website at this time. The Hobbs News-Sun has not yet responded to LifeSite's request for the articles. Classic, isn't it? Classic. The narrative, systemic racism in New Mexico. Following the meeting, the News-Sun published another article which announced the plan to host a public hearing in Lee County, where the city of Hobbs is located, for the public to share opinions on the ordinance. The public meeting is scheduled for December 8. A statement from Democrat Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham epitomizes the pro-abortion leadership in New Mexico. This resolution, authored by out-of-state extremists, the worst kind, Jose.
Extremists.
Extremists. People just trying to say, how dare they, trying to save the life of unborn babies. Working to further their special interest agenda is a clear affront to the rights of personal autonomy of every woman in Hobbs, except those women that are still in the womb. In southeastern New Mexico, and we will not stand for it, Grisham said. Reproductive health care is legal and protected in every corner of our state. Providers delivering health care have every right to establish a practice, and all women have the right to access to medication abortion services no matter where in New Mexico they call home, even if it's against federal law.
Wow.
Contrary to the pro-abortion response, Republican Senator David Gallegos supported the ordinance with a comparison between abortion in America and the Holocaust in Europe, as reported by the New Sun. New Mexico is 50% Catholic, the senator said. I think New Mexico as a whole, except a few leaders, want to save lives. If we were thinking about women's health, it would be done in a hospital, but it isn't. I think God gave us the cure for cancer, but we aborted her. You know, the one who could have cured cancer was aborted. The senator did not respond to LifeSide's request for further comment. Previously, the state of New Mexico has approved various pro-abortion measures, including an executive order in June which forbids state agencies from assisting in the prosecution of abortionists in other states unless New Mexico laws were violated. In September, Governor Grisham signed another order to use $10 million to build and operate a new abortion facility.
The government of New Mexico?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Remember those state-run camps during World War II? And yeah, that's the Godwin's rule where you bring up the Nazi Germany, but that was state-run execution camps.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what an abortion mill is.
Exactly.
You know, this is interesting. The rhetoric of the pro-abortionists has changed drastically from legal, safe, and rare to how dare you stop us from killing the unborn.
Yeah.
And it's really telling. Yeah, I do agree that Parkinson has a point that these politicians really need to tell what they really stand for.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Wrigley Field for a minute here.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Looking for a boost in leadership? Live to Lead is back. Guam's #1 leadership event is coming November 29th at the Hyatt Regency Guam. It's the 8th annual global simulcast with 5 world-class speakers led by John C. Maxwell. We'll have leadership activities at the table, and you'll get a plan to jumpstart 2023. It's an exciting and energizing day to reset and recharge. Get all the details at livetoleadguam.com. That's live2leadguam.com. Live2leadguam.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, the Guam Chamber of Commerce, Guam Contractors Association, the Guam Daily Post, and 93.3 FM, The Point. Get the details and the lowest possible ticket prices right now at livetoleadguam.com. I'm Jerry Roberts, and I approve this message.
So, 3 cheers for Hobbs, New Mexico. And you incoming senators or your sitting senators, you may want to get in touch with the folks down in Hobbs and take advantage of that federal statute dealing with chemical abortions, which would seem to really have a dramatic effect on Redu and Kanashiro's mail order practice of chemical abortions that currently pens before the Ninth Circuit. Okay, I'm going to deviate from where we've been here for a little while. Talk a little bit about economics, especially national economics, and the word greed. Now, everybody knows that greed is bad, right? And short of calling somebody racist, the worst thing you can say, he's greedy. He's greedy. And I've always had a tough time with that word because I'm not sure I know exactly what it means. You know, I want to make as much money as I can. If somebody wants to hire me to do something, I want to get the most money for my services that the guy is going to pay me. And I don't think I'm different from anybody else. I've hired a lot of folks in my life. And, you know, you sit down, you go through the interview, and you talk a little bit, and you decide maybe you're going to make the guy an offer, the person an offer, so the person is sitting in front of you, and you say, you know, I'd really like to have you come to work for us. Can you start next Monday? Yeah. Okay, well, this is how much we're going to pay you to start. We're going to give you, let's just pick a number, right? We're going to give you $15 an hour to start with the understanding that, you know, if you work out, there will be some raises along the line. How does $15 an hour sound to you? Almost everybody I've had that conversation with says this to me. That's too much, Bob. Yeah, I think probably 11 would be better. I can get along on 11. I don't want to be greedy and ask you to pay me more money than what I really need. Is that how greed works? I've never, ever come close to having anything like that.
No, I don't think so.
No. And the same with, you know, buying things. When you go to the store, you go to Payless and you want to buy say you wanted to buy a 6-pack, and you take it up to the cashier, and there's no price on it. You ask the cashier, how much is that? And she does her magic wand, and she says, it's marked at $6.75, but that's too much, Bob. I'm going to let you have it for $5 because, you know, the owners of Payless are not. Is that how it works? What exactly does greed mean then? Aren't people naturally acquisitive? Don't they always want, isn't the natural human tendency to do what you can to improve your lot? Is that an example of greed?
Here's an example of not greed, where somebody is in need of some money, and so they ask you for a loan, and you tack about a percentage, right, for them to pay the loan back. Now they've already paid the loan itself back, and now there's percentage. There's, what is it called again?
Interest.
Interest to be paid.
Well, unless you're the mafia, then it's called vigorage.
But But, once that loan is paid back, you really don't need that interest.
Yeah, why should you get interest?
But nobody says that collecting on that interest is greed.
No. So I think greed often travels together with envy. That another human tendency is to envy people that have it better off than they do, and oftentimes ascribe some improper method to get to be better off than the observer, right? And the obvious answer is, well, he's so greedy. That's why he has so much money. So I don't use the word greed very often because I find it's mostly a useless word. It's an attack word. Oh, those people are rich. They're so greedy. So let's talk a little bit about greedflation. I should have spent a little time and dug out Pocahontas's last article when she talked about the reason that we're having inflation now is because businesses are so greedy. Yeah, I think I might have even read it into the record here.
I think that article was like banned on Guam.
Yeah. So that would be the Elizabeth Warren take. The reason we have inflation is because businesses are so greedy and they're just gouging people wherever they can. So let's bring a little common sense to the process here. I've got an article from Mises.org written by Connor O'Keefe. And this is what he says. Even as price inflation flows and we move past June's peak, progressives continue to push the concept of greedflation. That's this year's price inflation is caused by corporate greed and price gouging. This is inaccurate, based on bad economics, and it blames a consequence of the problem rather than the problem itself. If we want to address the real issues in the economy and avoid similar pain in the future, we need to get serious and drop greedflation from the discussion. In fact, my advice is just drop the word greed from your vocabulary, unless you have a really, really good reason to use it that would withstand scrutiny. Going on, the standard response to the assertion that this episode of price inflation has been caused by greed is to point out that there's no reason to think that the level of greed in the economy has suddenly increased. That is true, but it doesn't address the core of the greedflation argument. Most proponents will admit that the price inflation was kicked off by supply shortages resulting from lockdowns. Greedy people caused the lockdowns? No, power-mad people caused the lockdowns. They will argue that in an environment where everyone is talking about and expecting inflation, companies can raise prices even higher than rising costs would have compelled them. Companies can then enjoy larger profits, the story goes, at the expense of already struggling consumers. So what's the problem with this? Well, it rests on a common but flawed understanding of prices. People often talk about prices in two contradictory ways. Either they frame them as objective measurements of value or as arbitrary numbers made up by businesses. Neither of these characterizations is correct. Prices are not an indication of the objective value. In fact, they come about through exchanges between people with expressly different valuations of the goods and services traded. If you try to sell me a cup of coffee for $4, you demonstrate that you value the $4 more than the cup of coffee. Notably, the exchange will only occur if I value the cup of coffee more than the $4 I'd be giving up. So prices are records of exchange ratios brought about by differing subjective valuations. If I told you I would sell you my 30-year-old Rocky for $50,000, that means you would value that 30-year-old car more than you value $50,000. And for me, I'd rather have the folding money than the car. Now, you can look at every single blue book in the world, and you won't find any of them that tell you that a 30-year-old Daihatsu Rocky is worth 50 grand, or probably even half that much. But I wouldn't sell it because to me it's worth more than $50,000. I love that car. So if you want to buy that car from me, you're going to come up with some heavy-duty cash. And telling me, well, according to Kelley Blue Book, it's only worth $5,000 isn't going to get you anywhere at all. That's exactly how it works.
So are you greedy for keeping your vehicle?
I am very greedy. I am a greedy person. Yeah. Well, I'd be greedy if I took the 50,000.
Oh, you took the 50.
Yeah, for a car that's really only worth 4 or 5. That would be
See,
greed.
that's where the greed comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Whenever you choose not to buy something you can technically afford, you reveal the subjective nature of prices. Now, when I was a youngster, we used to talk about something called sales resistance. So you see a new shirt down in the window at Kane's clothing store, and you say, man, that's a really nice shirt. And it costs $15. Well, I got $15, and ordinarily I pay $7 or $8 for my shirts. But I could afford that shirt. Now, sales resistance, and I don't know if people understand this anymore or not, goes like this. If you really want to buy something, don't. Wait until tomorrow. Let some time pass and see if you really want to buy it tomorrow as bad as you did today. Avoid the impulse purchases, right? And chances are, there's a very good chance that, you know, if I saw that shirt, the next day I'd say to myself, no, it's a really nice shirt, but I'm not going to spend $15 for it. And I still do things like that today, you know, when it comes to going, you know, maybe going to fancy restaurants or ordering something on the menu at a restaurant, something I really like, but I don't know, I don't want to spend that kind of money. I'm going to order something a little less expensive. That's what we're talking about here. Okay. In the same way, prices are not arbitrary. Are you listening? Are you listening, R. Carl? Because you're going to be happy with this next sentence. As Thomas Sowell writes in the opening pages of his book, Basic Economics, diverting for a second, if you don't know anything about basic economics, buy his book, Basic Economics, because there's nothing basic about it. It's extremely well written, very interesting. Once you get started, you won't be able to put it down. And when you finish it, you'll have a complete understanding, maybe not in depth, of what we mean when we're talking about economics. A great writer, a great thinker, and he's up in his 90s. And, you know, I dread the day, but I know it's going to come soon. But he has left such a legacy behind. Anyhow, in his book, Basic Economics, here's a quote. Well, you may put whatever price you wish on the goods or services you provide, those prices will become economic realities only if others are willing to pay them. So, Jose, I just bought a brand new lawnmower. It's got a special trim feature, and it's got a blade that cuts the grass so it looks so nice. I've been doing your lawn for $10. $10 a week for your lawn, right? Now I got this new lawnmower, and I had to put down $700 for the lawnmower. So in order to pay for the lawnmower, I'm going to have to double my price for your lawn. So I show up and I say, Jose, it's going to cost you $20 this week. And you say, I ain't paying no $20 for you to mow my lawn, Bob. I'll give you 10. No, Jose, you don't understand. I can't afford it. I've got a new lawnmower. You've got to pay me 20. Sorry, Bob. Get over there across the street. We'll do it for 10 if you don't want to do it for 10. It's been nice knowing you. Adios. Get the hell out of here. That's the way it works. Who's greedy there? You are.
The lawn guy.
Yeah.
Who owns the lawn.
Yeah. Going back to the above example, you are free to jack up the price of your cup of coffee as high as you please, but you will not sell it until you charge a price someone is willing to pay. That's why the very concept of price gouging is flawed. You may not personally like how high the price is, but others still consider it a worthwhile deal. The fact that companies are charging higher prices these days does not mean that those prices are somehow wrong. In fact, we know they are not wrong because people have demonstrated a willingness to pay them. In other words, this year's higher prices are not the problem. I'm going to stop here because we get into something a little different that I want to comment on also. It's time for us to go to Churchill Downs, and when I get out of Churchill Downs, I've got another Joe who probably wants to talk about the heartbeat bill, right? Since we talked about that an hour ago, it's about time for another Joe to raise it. Let's head for Churchill Downs, Jose.
Farewell, ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. It's Reggae in Paradise this Saturday at Paseo Stadium, featuring Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy,
get this work, I'll be on my way.
High Water,
like Pearl, and there will be no other girl for me.
And Rebel Sojas.
My life is on a spaceship.
Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. This Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, 6 furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line to wrap up another episode of Tall Tales. Now, you know, here on Tall Tales, it boggles the mind, but sometimes people out there in an international listening audience will say things that are wrong. given the quality of instruction available here on Tall Tales, I always wonder how this happens, but I'm a pretty magnanimous guy. So I protect people's right to be wrong, even when they're wrong. So I've got a caller here, the other Tim, who I've talked to before, and the other Tim says he has a contrary perspective, which probably means he disagrees with the article that I'm working on here that quotes Thomas Sowell. So in accordance with the spirit of Tall Tales, if the other Tim wants to say something that's wrong, go ahead, the other Tim. I'll allow it.
Well, first, let's start off by saying that Thomas Sowell is one of my favorite economists, and I've studied him immensely. However, what you're reading is not wrong. It's just how you're reading it that is wrong.
Well, it was. Should I be reading it in Chamorro, the other Tim?
Oh, I'm not talking about the language. I'm talking about your translation.
Oh.
Now, see, I was riding along with you, and I was enjoying the scenery right up to the point where you got to the absolutes. And that's where I had to call in. Now, in a perfect market economy, we would see that price is based on supply, demand, and, as you were saying, perceived value. In a perfect market economy, a business would operate on the cost of goods sold plus a reasonable profit margin.
Why a reasonable profit margin?
Well, I was going to say that way it provides equal opportunity for the populace to have access to your product.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you right there.
Well, you're welcome to do that, and you can be wrong too.
I don't think that's possible. The other Tim, because if a business is able to sell something for a profit, I just have a hard time imagining a businessman saying, "Well, let's see, here's a reasonable profit. What we're selling here in today's market, we could make twice as much profit, but that wouldn't be reasonable. So we're going to cut it back."
Yeah, you just went against every principle Sam Walton ever created or devised. The purpose of a perfect market economy is to provide access to products equally among the populace. Stack it high, sell it cheap. Now, that's not to say that a business cannot profit from a product that is scarce. If you've got a block of gold and somebody's willing to pay $10,000 for that block of gold, so be it. Now, I don't want to go into a whole economics lesson, but I do want to make a point. And my point is, and my challenge to you is, what happens in a market when the government subsidizes the market? And I'll give you a key point. The real estate market on Guam is in super hyperinflation based on a special interest group. And therefore, it's only because one small group of people are willing to pay exorbitant amount of cost, which they, the special interest group, reap the benefit and the profits from, because the group they're selling to doesn't pay for the profit, the product. The taxpayer pays.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but exactly. I don't see that deviates from what I've been, what this article basically says.
Yeah, it's called artificial inflation, in which you base a market on one small segment that says, oh, I can buy a house for $500,000 because I can rent it to the government for $2,500 every month. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, I'll make my money back. But what does that do to the rest of the population on the island that is not getting that government subsidy?
Well, what does it do to the price of rentals? That to me is the question. So the other Tim. So if I can rent my house out for $2,500 a month to a Navy man, I'm going to rent it out for $2,500 a month to a Navy man. I'm not going to be that unless I'm some altruistic person. I'm not going to say, I'm going to turn him away and rent it to somebody else who can only afford $1,500.
But you could rent that same property to $1,500 to that Navy man.
Well, why would I want to?
Well, because you're greedy.
There you go. You just proved my point. You just exactly proved my point.
Well,
that people are in business to make money.
Well,
and
that's not true.
They're not in business.
True.
People are not in business to make money.
No, that is not true, Bob. People are in business to provide goods and services at a fair price. That is what business is based on. That is, if otherwise, business would be nothing more than selling to the rich and screwing over the poor, which now you enter into a socialist economy.
I think we just got there. I think we just got there. Now, going back to Sam Walton and your thesis about charging a reasonable price, I would start out with the proposition that people who are in business want to maximize profits. And perhaps the only reason that would, if it were me, that would persuade me not to, is that as I maximize profits, I'm going to be ginning up competition. Somebody else is going to look at Bob Enterprise and saying, wow, Bob makes $25 off every widget that he sells. And I know his cost of goods sold and his labor, et cetera, only comes up to about $7. So Bob is making $17 after every widget. I could sell widgets for $15 and still come up with a very handsome profit. So that's what I'm going to do. It's the only reason that Bob would see I'm not going to maximize profits is because by maximizing profits, I tend to generate competition that over the long haul may very well reduce the amount of revenue that I take in. And it's
you got an A. You just got an A in economics there, Bob.
Well,
it's not about maximizing profits. It's about sustainability.
Well, it depends on what business you're in, where you are, and how old you are. You think I'm interested in sustainability at my age?
We're going to keep you around for another 20, 25 years. I mean,
you finally showed some wisdom there the other time.
Yeah. Oh, we got medical miracles, Bob.
Well, I think the fact that I'm still stumbling around and jabbering into this microphone is something of a medical miracle in itself. It's kind of like Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle said, in his final days, he said, if I knew I was going to be around so long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Absolutely. So to summarize here, we've got the real estate market that is artificially inflated by the real estate brokers. You've got the gasoline prices that are artificially inflated by the petroleum companies. And I'm not talking about, don't pump the oil. I'm talking about going back 15, 20 years on Guam when we've been paying $1.50 to even $2 more for a gallon of gas than our neighbors, if you want to put it that way. So
our neighbors in Saipan pay about $1 a gallon more than we do.
Yes. But what I'm getting at is there is some validity in the aspect of greed in economics. But in a perfect market, that greed would quickly be squashed as the market incentive creates more competition.
So who is going to dump and invest enough capital to compete with the oil industry as we know it right now? And how long would it take for that? It just couldn't come out that way. You know, our competition here is geography. That it just isn't in the cards. Bob, it isn't in the cards for anybody to come in and put in the physical plant to compete with the prices here. Another Tim, I got to go.
I understand, but
I got to say goodbye to our president. Okay?
Oh, of course. Let's go, Brandon.
There you go. Let's go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Reaching for the moon, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's the sound of an Orion rocket blasting up from Cape Canaveral, Florida, about an hour ago on the country's first moonshot in nearly 50 years. The Artemis 1 mission is carrying mannequins in a crew capsule that will orbit the moon. NASA's director Bill Nelson says this is a shakedown flight.
We're going to stress it and test it beyond what the normal flight will be so that we will know that it's safe to put 4 human beings on the top of it.
Artemis 2, which would carry a live crew, isn't scheduled to launch until 2024 at the earliest. Former President Trump has launched his third presidential campaign.
Former President Donald Trump is now officially looking to become next President Donald Trump.
My fellow citizens, America's comeback starts right now.
Making the announcement Tuesday night in front of a filled ballroom at his Mar-a-Lago club, Mr. Trump spent about an hour recounting his accomplishments, criticizing changes made by President Biden, noting the rise of inflation, along with fuel and food prices, war in Europe, and the threat of it in Taiwan. Mr. Trump called for an overhaul of election law and campaign finance, calling his new plan the National Greatness Agenda.
Fox's Eben Brown. President Biden is returning from the G20 summit meeting in Bali, where he pledged continued support for Ukraine.
We support Ukraine fully in this moment, and we have since the start this conflict. We're going to continue to do whatever it takes to give them the capacity to defend themselves.
The Biden administration asking Congress for another $38 billion in emergency aid for Ukraine. About that Russian-made missile that landed in Poland, U.S. intelligence now believes it was fired by Ukrainian forces trying to shoot down an inbound rocket that had been fired by the Russians. America is listening to Fox News.